panel discussion on current trends on cybersecurity, which is moderated by Donavan Cheah. So I would like to call upon our dear panelists, and we have first Kamal Sharma, who is VP and CISO at ASM Technologies. We have Praveen Kumar M, who is an esteemed cybersecurity leader, and then we have Sanjay Singh, who is advisory at RACNAP. And for some unforeseen reasons, Praveen Dikshit could not join us. So please give them a huge round of applause and welcome our panelists.
Good afternoon, everyone. Namaste, Bangalore. This is my first time in India, so I'd like to thank everyone for giving me such a warm welcome. And of course, I'm esteemed to be your panel moderator for today. Right. But before that, let's just set some house rules, right? Because time is running really tight. Okay. So I would like to just make sure that later we'll open some time for questions to the floor. But when you ask questions, make sure to ask only one question. Okay. Otherwise, we are not going for tea break. Okay. If all of that is good, then I think what I'd like to do now is to first invite all our various panelists to give a very short introduction about themselves, and then I will start the ball rolling with some questions.
Good afternoon. I'm Kamal. I work for ASM Technologies, manage the enterprise security, as well as I head the cybersecurity practice for ASM.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Sanjay Singh. I took an exit from a full-time role very recently. I used to work for a company called Games 24/7, the online gaming company, and took an exit, and I'm now more into the entire digital transformation, including security, and working with a few companies.
Hi, Praveen Motupalli. I've been working on cybersecurity from past 2 decades in healthcare, financial banking, and manufacturing. So I'm just onto cybersecurity and sharing the knowledge. Thank you.
Okay, and lastly for myself, I work in Thales. I've been introduced already, and in Thales we deal with all sorts of various systems. So when it comes to modern trends in cybersecurity, let me just first qualify one very important thing, right? And that is modern trends in cybersecurity is not just AI. Okay, there are many more exciting things we can talk about, and if you don't believe me, you can just go on the ChatGPT, ask it for 5 different trends in cybersecurity. I'm sure it'll give you all sorts of interesting trends, right? Of which we can talk about a few of them today, right? And all the AI discussions, I guess we can leave it to the end for question time in case indeed that is something you want answers to. So I think looking at the profile of the panelists today, right, they come from many different walks of life, and I'm sure that they will have dealt with many different areas in cybersecurity. Like, for example, Praveen, you talked about healthcare, you talked about manufacturing, right? And one of the trends in cybersecurity today, of course, is securing operational technology systems. And that's because that's also what I work on. And I think perhaps the first question goes to you, right? What are some of these trends you see that are worrying in the OT space? And what are some of the security considerations that we need to think about that are different, right, compared to our typical enterprise IT context?
Okay. I think I'm back online. So as Donavan mentioned about ChatGPT and all, which can give you all information about it. And OT is one of the most highly growing thing. In the last year, 2023, almost 4x times the exploits in OT have increased very much. And as you could see over now, most of the devices currently on the market, they're very much OT enabled onto. So which, for example, at our home also, if you could see the end products like the refrigerator, and we also got the air conditioning systems which are there. So they all are very much powered by the OT technologies. And this is very much important and a bit worrisome at times because the manufacturing is going very fast, and at times the manufacturers don't have the cost to cover the security aspect of it. However, good players in the industry are trying to secure them by ensuring security is inbuilt. Security by design is being followed onto that. But still, it is a worrisome factor wherever OT products are being developed. But however, there is no security being embedded onto. So that becomes a concerning factor onto.
Mike. Okay, there are often considerations, right, such as safety checks, which often take a really long time to do, right? So for example, if we say in the IT world, we talk about patch management, right? Oh, that's quite simple to do. But in the OT world, each time you change the system, You need to recertify the system. So that's clearly a problem, right? And clearly you need to think about security right from the start by design, knowing that you will face these problems. Okay, moving on from the OT side, of course, there are more trends to talk about. So I think the next question, right, I have, right, which I guess either one of you can answer, is this. So I think in the audience today, right, I'm sure many of you are students. Maybe a show of hands, how many of you are students here? 1, 2, you see quite a number, right? And I think over the years, cybersecurity training has changed, right? Back when I was a pen tester, when I did the OSCP, it was when Mati Aharoni was still in OffSec, and it was still the very old labs, the shared labs, where the mantra then was, if it's not in the notes, right, you must try harder. You go and find what you should do. Now, of course, there's so many different training providers out there, but at the same time, cybersecurity is so much more complicated. So based on both of you, your years of experience in this field, if there's some advice you'd like to share with some of our students today, what would it be when it comes to picking a certain area, a certain domain in cybersecurity to get themselves started?
Okay, that's a very, very interesting question and very close to my heart. And why? Because I run a program with Reva University. It's a pro bono program, upskilling the students. And that was run under the basically IC Square Bangalore chapter. And it was a 9 months program. So, see, the first thing is the basics never change. So you need to know the basics. And that's how, in fact, in that program we started. Irrespective of what trend is happening, what is changing, your basics of infrastructure, networking, operating systems, Linux, these three you need to know. If you don't know those, you can't be a great security expert, especially on technical side. Even if you have to do GRCs and all, still you need the basics of it. You can't be a great auditor if you don't understand how network works, how operating system works, how the system works. So the key would be start with the basics of operating systems, take it to the networking, how the IP networks, and beyond that, then you will have to go on hands-on trainings. You will find so many trainings online, you can go through it, but really you need the hands-on, you need to get into the labs. I think that will set you up for what you want to do.
All right, so to me, I think in my opinion, one is you need to have enough curiosity to find out what can break, right? Not that waiting for a problem to happen and then you think about a solution, but when you are designing something, when you are building something, think about security as first, right? And I think thanks to all the ransomware and whatnot, there is a lot of awareness in the industry throughout the world, and a lot of focus now in last at least few years, especially after COVID, a lot of focus on security. So that's a good thing, right? So as I said, focus on security while you are building it. Ensure that security is built in. The second part is, always look for something that can be improved, right? When I got exposed to security attacks, more than 2 decades ago, when I was building, when I was learning, the DNS server, I had my DNS was connected to the public network, and I installed Wine DNS. I don't remember the version now. Next day, I come into office and I see that the server is already hacked, right? And there is a message on the screen that your system is hacked. All the log files are deleted and things like that. And that gave me enough curiosity to find out how can a system be hacked. I didn't even know what the hacking is those days. And then figured out that, hey, there are a lot of ways through which if your system is not designed and not secure, then you may have these kind of issues. So again, do not wait for a disaster to happen and then fix it. The other one that comes to my mind is when you think about security, when you take this role, always be prepared or be ready to be available anytime, right? It's just as good as doctor's job, where as a doctor you cannot say, hey, it's my sleeping time, it's my movie time, or whatever. As a security expert or security practitioner, the accident or issue or incident can happen any point of time, and you be prepared for that.
Yep, thank you, both of you, for your insightful sharing and from different perspectives, right? One, you're looking at how you should make sure that you master the basics of what you're going to do before you can even say, okay, there's a trend going on in cybersecurity. I'm able to pivot into that sector. Could be by blockchain, could be like IoT security, OT security, etc. Right? I think I see Mukta here, right? So I think you surely agree with me that before you pick up Solidity, you first need to understand how to write code, right? And how do you write code? You learn from a more typical language like Python or C, right? Okay, so that it's one area that is the people aspect of cybersecurity, how you get started. And I'm sure that that is something that the students will ask us questions during tea break later on how they're going to get started, right? So let me move on into another area in cybersecurity, and this one perhaps is a bit more worrying, right? I'm sure everybody knows that there have been supply chain attacks, right? And these supply chain attacks are quite nefarious in the sense that because today, chances are very few firms would claim or would even dare to claim that they pretty much use only their own products in securing their own infrastructure, right? We buy solutions from many different vendors. We engage many service providers to come in for various services. And some of these services, like for example, you conduct a pen test, you require a high degree of trust because if you engage a fly-by-night vendor, the vendor might install a backdoor, not tell you about it, right? Having said that, since supply chain attacks are so difficult, right, to deal with, yet it is an important trend because there are so many ways this can go wrong. A vendor gets compromised, right? Or a nation state is interested in a certain country's solutions and find some way to put their own people in to change certain components. How will you deal with supply chain risk in your organizations?
How the vendors and all used for attacking the upstream customers. So there are multiple things you need to do. One is obviously you have to pick the right vendor. And how do you do that? Doing your assessments, picking the vendors who actually do take care of security, right? And some of the compliances, if they follow, do they do the regular checks of their codes? Do they do the VAPTs, source codes assessments, and so on? I think that's the primary thing from technically you'll have to look at that the vendor who you are engaging, they are actually taking care of their code security. The second part is keeping a continuous watch. You can choose best of the vendors. In fact, the recent breaches, what we have seen are very, very popular softwares, big companies, and so on. They were doing enough, but they could still got breached. So the next thing is that you keep a watch what is happening in the cyber world and be prepared to respond quickly as soon as one of your vendor gets breached. I think that's the way we'll have to take it forward. We'll have to live with the supply chain. The world is and more integrated, but you'll have to just keep, be vigilant and make sure that you use the right softwares and keep a continuous watch on it.
Okay. This is a very interesting topic, and I would like to add some points onto that. How many of you are serious on supply chain security? If you can raise your hands. Or I don't know about supply chain security, also you can make. So one of the important thing about supply chain security is like whenever we go with the contract of a vendor, so those are the days where if it is a house, we go for a rent agreement, or for shopping again, an agreement is there. So in the olden days, in 1980s, 90s, and 2000s, and still some companies, they still follow the NDAs. Okay, so NDAs are the one things which they just put. It is just like an antibiotic. It's a band-aid. Everything is there in that. So, but gone are those days. So if we go with the NDAs and agreements which are there for 10 years, it will not help in supply chain. So what we need to do ensure is that we also need to go with a cyber legal framework. Okay, earlier legal teams used to only do the NDA work. Now because we got the cybersecurity thing happening in the industry, privacy is there, and also new technologies are also coming into, new laws are coming of AI and all. So if we have to, then we need to have a task force set up in the company called as the cyber legal framework. So in my experience, I have done so because legal team is not so acquainted with the frameworks of cyber, nor even for the privacy also fully. Okay, so we need to ensure that we have a separate contract which covers about cybersecurity. Like for example, we can take the best practices from the ISO 27001 or the NIST, where we can keep what is the vendor supply chain should follow all these steps. Point number one. And again, we should also have the privacy clauses again into that. So what are the privacy clauses which they have to follow, which we have to again put on to. So that would be the very much important thing which can safeguard a company. And again, we can also put one more clause into that where we can say we as a company can go to the supply chain, our suppliers, and go and audit them on a regular basis whenever we need them. Okay, so these things will ensure that we can be able to strengthen the company. So many of us think that why not we can do a VAPT, as Kamal mentioned, VAPT is good, pen test is good, but against a cost, they will do it. But however, having a agreement in this way would really protect the company on the future risks. Thank you.
All right, so my thought is, do your due diligence with your vendors. It's like zero trust. I mean, not just vendors, but anyone as such, right? When you are, dealing with, or when you are integrating your services, your infrastructure with any of your service providers, make sure that you have done enough due diligence to ensure that how they're, storing your data as such, right? What kind of policies they have, what kind of access controls they have. And typically, I mean, in today's world, right? I mean, any hack or anything, hack attacks that happens, it becomes public news. I remember one of the service providers, in the IAM space, they were talking to me where they were breached just a few weeks ago. And I had a question that, hey, you got breached just a few weeks ago, and then you are convincing me to buy your service. How do you ensure that you have taken enough controls to ensure that your services are secure? The data that you are storing, if at all any data of my customers you are storing in your network, how are you ensuring that those are kept safe and secure? So in my opinion, these are some of the things. I mean, it is ultimately your data, right? I mean, you are responsible and accountable. You need to ensure that and in today's world, you cannot say no, right? Everything is integration, right? You have upstream systems, you have downstream systems, and you will have some kind of integration for sure. But I think having all the due diligence definitely is going to help.
Just would like to add to what my colleague has mentioned about. So also we need, sometimes there's a pushback of compliance. I also experienced like the startup company comes and says that, hey, look, you put a lot of good compliance checks, but you don't have time and money onto that. So this also can happen. So we need to be ensuring that how do we ensure we cover up this when the supply is pushing back also.
Yep. So I think these are all very insightful, and especially because supply chain is so multidimensional, there are clearly lots of different areas that we have to keep a lookout for. In the interest of time, because I think I only have 5 minutes left, right, I would like to open the rest of the time for the floor to ask any questions. To be helpful, ask one short question. If possible, if it's directed at anyone here, tell us who the question is directed to. Anyone to kickstart the discussions? You can ask about AI also.
So he didn't give us chance to talk about AI, so I'll have to speak. So how many of you are actually come from companies which deal a lot of with OT security, and how many are actually the enterprises? Enterprises? Okay, and OT? Okay, so you got the answer. Because he comes from Thales, he would focus on OT. But AI is the trend. Whether you like it or not, the biggest risk today is AI. And I don't know if how many of you read about the co-pilot stuff. The co-pilots are the biggest insider threat vectors. If you don't manage it well, actually that is going to be biggest issue for each one of us. And there is no answer today. So And among the co-pilots, Microsoft Copilot is the biggest risk. Okay. Their website actually, when you open, it says
The privacy.
the privacy could be a challenge. Okay. So, but we still go and use it. By the way, my son works for Microsoft, so but the fact is, it improves the productivity so much. All of us will end up using it. We need to find answers to secure our data, and there is no easy answer to this. The answer lies in first your access control, giving the right access to the right resources. Second, labeling your data. And for that, Microsoft offers another product to you, Microsoft Preview. So maybe you buy one and get another one, pay for another one, and probably you get some solution out of it till you get another problem out of it. So AI is the trend. We'll end up going to use it. We will have threats, we'll have risks, we'll have to find solutions for it.
Just
Thank
to
you.
add to Kamal, I think still you're preparing for questions. So we do have new trends coming in the industry in 2024, which are declared also. One is the AI phishing, which is very much prevalent onto. And I think most of you are aware about the dark web and the deep web, right? So in the dark web and deep web also, there are a lot of products being developed with the AI engines. So we got, as you heard about ChatGPT, we also got the XXX GPT, Wolf GPT, so which are very much prevalent in the dark web, which are used as weapons to do phishing also. And there are paid services which are available, which are very much there. And it's also very important for the companies to ensure that they also beef up the security teams on the AI warfare, which is very much prevalent onto. And the third thing on the upcoming trends also, we also are be going to see from passwords will be going off and we go for passkeys, which is also one of the new thing coming out to picture. And deepfakes, which are the things which are going to go very more depth into, but however, we need to ensure as cybersecurity teams, how do we strengthen them? One last thing from my side is the AI hallucination, okay? How do the AI hallucination also happens onto, okay, which are done through the LLM models.
Yep. So for the rest of the floor, now that you heard the AI stuff, yeah, you see, now you have a question, right?
How could we ask?
Thank you for opening about the Copilot. So I have a question. So I do pen test, and usually for an application I pen tested, like some information and suppose not shown to us, right? Will not be able to see. No one will be see some information in the application. But with the Copilot stuff, I was able to get a sensitive information about other people and all. So what guidelines do they follow in order to not to reveal the secret to the common people?
So, see, you answered the question. Okay?
No, I have to understand what was the guideline for building the Copilot and all.
Okay, so when you look at, so what Copilot does, basically it resides across, so whatever access you are given to different Microsoft applications, the same access gets into the Microsoft Copilot.
It's not a Microsoft application. As due to its secret nature, I cannot reveal the name.
Okay, then maybe specific we may not be able to answer. If you give, maybe we might be able to. But okay, the point is, so unless you get into little more details, I don't know how we can give you solution. But primarily, the access is what Copilot uses. So each Copilot relies on what kind of access you are given to the different users. And again, I'll give you the example of using Teams. Okay, using Teams, you can ask for one particular this thing. It will go around your environment and it will pull out all the data available related to that, even if you don't have access to it. Okay. So similarly, whatever application you are using, potentially you are able to get that because that kind of access is given to that application to different users, and Copilot gets that automatic access, and eventually you get the access. So the access control has to be there to address that problem. But maybe detail if you talk about, we can talk about offline.
Like that doesn't clarify my doubt anyway, but I'm not
Maybe,
going
yeah.
to give more insight into it because it's
Just
personal
to
stuff,
help you
so-
better, since you got very The question is very much secret, is what you're mentioning. We are available in the tea time, three of us.
I don't want to face my. I don't want to lose my face anyway.
Okay, I think with that we can discuss over tea time, right?
Tea
In
time
case
is
there are
fine.
other
Okay.
questions.
Yeah, with you,
It's
just
also secret.
the secret answer we will give you.
Hey, good, bye. We started. I know that.
That. I presume this is a compliance question, right? For one of the panelists, because I obviously cannot answer on Indian law.
Yeah, it's not. If you can understand the GDPR on the same
GDPR,
lines.
okay.
See, I'll tell you in the GDPR. If you can't, I'm asking you. In the GDPR, you had right to forgetting. You trained your AI algorithm with the PII data, and but AI should not reveal. And you anonymize the PII data, and you train the LLM model, and the right to forgotten. Then how you're going to remove the data from there? Right to forgotten is how do you come from there?
No, see,
In
if you are
LLMs,
using a
train
public,
AI.
if you are using a public model, it's you don't have control on it, okay? Because once you have put the data there,
Yeah.
it's in somebody else's control, so you can't do anything about it. Okay, so your control needs to be not to put that PII data into those models. The second part would be the company which is operating those models in your country, the government will go after them to make sure that they remove the PII in some way. I think that's the only way to deal with it.
Yeah, right now there is no law. Now it can train further, and then they say that you had right to forget. Example of DPDP.
Just to
GDPR is already implemented. Okay, what you told as per the first case, because GDPR is implemented, you can't train the AI algorithm with PI data. But in case of DPDP Act, still not it's not implemented. We are going to train right now all the models with whatever data you had, and finally the law comes into picture, then every individual has a right to be deletion, right to be removed from the data. How it's going to address the risk, compliance risk there?
just to mention, like you are like an AI for me answering the question also. So also the answer is given. See, the point is that still the DPDP Act has to be fully formalized onto in the Indian space. And regarding the EU specific, EU came up fortnight, I think, or 3 weeks back with the new AI law where the heavy penalties are there. As Kamal mentioned about the deletion and all these things. So now, earlier it was not there. Everybody was having a free will. The ChatGPT is there. Put something, everything comes up into picture, and they make it as a software and a package. Now, with the new law coming into picture in the European space, they have to ensure that they abide by the law, that they ensure that whatever the European government is asking for, when they're in the European Union, they have to follow those laws. Why? Because the penalties also are very high. So they don't have a choice that they can evade those things. If the government is saying, right to forget on this, then they have to forget that. How they're doing to do that is programmatically they have to ensure they have those policies and coming into picture. Other example, as I mentioned, or want to mention also, is that many companies are also now telling it to the employees that don't use ChatGPT or AI models, and the policies are there in the company. So the companies are very much prevalent onto. So if they really want to do, then the development teams which they are funding onto, they have to go and have their company policy internally defined onto what is the best practice they have to do, and how do they launch the product outside the company also, so that they ensure the specific geographic region, the laws are being also incorporated, because the big players, I will not name them, so they will not take that risk to pay the huge penalties. Hope I answered you. If not, you can ask me again. Thank you.
I think on the DPDP Act, this is still in draft, and you said that it is going to be enforced in 2 months. I doubt. I think
Well, not 2 months. We
I
don't
mean, in
know.
few
We don't
months,
have
right?
any
I think,
timeline in future.
Countries like India, I think we definitely need more than a year, right, before it gets enforced. So I'm sure that even after a year, we'll be probably talking about that, hey, it is yet to be enforced. But once it is enforced, right, I think the government will give enough time for the companies to be prepared, where these kind of opportunities or options are given to the individual users, whether someone wants to get rid of the data which is stored in the system. But then we as a country, we have to comply with this, right? We cannot be saying that I don't have that option, I cannot give that option to my end user. We have to comply with this.
Okay, I'll just wrap it up with one last point, right, from a philosophical point of view, right? And then we will wrap up the whole panel discussion. For the other questions, you catch us during tea break, right? So I think the important point here is quite simply put, and this is not a new problem, right? When cloud came up, people were worried about data sovereignty. People were asking, oh, when my data was hosted in another country, is it safe? Is it secure? What happens if that country decides to go rogue? And different countries around the world, mine included, came out with various legislation. I think the moral of the story here is, considering the title of today's panel, I think we need to understand that legislation will always be playing catch up with trends, right? So there's always this gray area where people will try their luck, people will do very interesting things until the law says, okay, now this is a problem, people are abusing this, we need legislation. Then the question is how fast, right? So maybe being part of the solution is to actually, speak to the government about it, actually collaborate with the government to come up with some sort of legislative framework to get some clarity, I guess. In Singapore, that's what we do, and we hope more countries around the world take a more consultative approach with their governments so we can all keep the world safer for all whilst leveraging modern technology. So I think with that, right, hopefully this panel discussion has been very insightful. I think once we talked about AI, everybody woke up. So for all the questions about AI, we can have them over tea break. Right, without further ado, let me hand this back to the organizers. You'll finally have tea break.